So first and foremost, thank you so much for being with us on the last day of Cisco Live. I am Lorena Marciano. I'm the director for Cisco EMEA, which includes also Russia, if you're wondering what the R stands for privacy. Before we start, you're not in front of of someone from the legal department. Privacy within Cisco is a business function. So we stand close to the business units and we stand close to the operation team. The reason for that, and the reason why I wanted to point you this out, is that what you're going to see today on the way we tackle GDPR is really done it's really what we have done through our systems, our products, throughout our own enterprise. So I'm not going to give you any lessons about GDPR unless you have questions. I'm happy to answer to those. But I wanted just to show you what we have done as a company and hopefully give some tips and maybe open up for discussion. I'm not so much interested in finishing my slides. I'm much more interested in us having a nice conversation around this topic. I don't know how nice it can be on GDPR, but we can always try to have a nice conversation. A few things, it's been a very busy week also for us in Cisco Live. As a privacy office, we have done, I think this is collectively I think is the 7th presentation that we gave on privacy. It's getting hotter and hotter, and the reason why you're here is because I think you shared that GDPR is now something that we all need to be conversant about, and more importantly, how do we translate, I think, those legal requirements in actionable technical requirements, I think. That's at least is my point of view. Hello, welcome. I'm also glad to see that there is diversity in this group, so that's also great for me. I'm going to also introduce Thomas Flambeau, which is helping me today.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Flambeau. I'm a pre-sales engineer, and my expertise is for a couple of years on privacy. So I've evangelized GDPR and Cisco and WebEx efforts around GDPR readiness, as well as helping out for the privacy data sheets, which is the key document that we've produced with regards to GDPR for our customers.
So let's get a bit started. So this is me. When GDPR was put into place, that was me reading it. Probably was most of you, how many of you are on a daily basis, interact on GDPR or privacy topics in your organization? How many of you? None? But that's so interesting that you're here today. That's great. So maybe tomorrow so my goal will be to get you to do this tomorrow in your enterprise. So this is me trying to read, GDPR and understanding how can I make it a safety manual out of it to make sure that my enterprise and Cisco enterprise is safe enough. More generally, what I understood from reading this is that it came into force in May last year. It's one of those laws where it's really up to us in our company deciding how to implement and what kind of risk do we want to take. In other words, the personal data that you're holding today, it's up to you to understand how to better protect them. And maybe get some insights from what GDPR says. So one thing that's quite important on GDPR, and this is because the guys here that charted me with this presentation, they also the other goal that they have is also to make sure that we kind of clear the way from certain myths of GDPR. And one of them is that it's not like something that is going to stop your business. It's actually meant to help you get better in your business, in your data management, but it's also your responsibility to get there. So it's really, you need to read through the law and taking the responsibility based on what kind of business do you have, and then take it further in your enterprise. I'll make you an example. For certain products that we sell, we don't have many personal data, right? We have very limited of them. For those, we took a collective decision to maybe not include to include only the controls that were really necessary, the baseline, to get ready for GDPR. So for example, if the notice, giving consent doesn't speak to you in your enterprise and what the product you're selling, just don't do it, right? That's not what you're supposed to do. Another important thing about GDPR is that there are very heavy fines associated with this, 4% of global turnover. We've seen recently Google with the 57 million. For Google, maybe it didn't mean much. I do understand. We made some calculation, and it was like, if we think that Google operates 24 hours, 7 days a week, it's actually the equivalent to, I think, like 4 hours of work of one person. So it's very, very limited. But it's a start, and my interpretation is that it will just escalate. However, we should not be waiting for the fines to come out, because what I'm more worried about It's keeping Cisco safe as a brand reputation. It's making sure that we use this exercise to understand what data do we have in our enterprise and actually how we can make the best out of it. In terms of things that are listed here, those are not really things of GDPR, but things that actually we saw that our customers are collectively worried about. That are particularly worried about the ability of erase the data. So I think we get every day an enormous amount of requests from people to get erased from our own from our own databases. Particularly, we get that with WebEx, which is strange enough. But there are people that actually want to unsubscribe from WebEx, and we go back and tell them, hey, if we delete you, it means you're not using WebEx anymore. And they actually wanted to do that. So it's amazing, like, the power of this right that people have, that we collectively have, and now people are using it. They're using it to tick off many, many products that they're actually using today, services they're using today. And some of them actually replied to that and said, oh, no, I want to continue using WebEx. And we said, well, we need to kind of have your email to get you in the dashboard and then use WebEx. So there is a bit of confusion. So it is a bit of a challenge at the moment for people to understand exactly what the right of erasure is. Another problem is the data portability, because it tells us that we need to move the data from one enterprise to another one. That has a lot to do with the interoperability of systems. So that's where we go on the technical part. You kind of need to have systems that we will talk to each other.
And back to the right to erasure, we have to stress that this does not apply if you have a valid reason to keep the data, right? So like production, support.
Yeah, exactly, as we said, for WebEx.
Yeah.
Anyone you see also for your customers of these requirements?
Let me just go through it once more. No, we've got more and more, let's say, advanced questions around the way we implement privacy, the way we design the products. And we will come back to that later, but the privacy data sheets and the CSDL are the proper answer to that. Yeah.
So, for example, in the collaboration space, the one requirement that we're putting together, we're making it technical, is really the privacy by design. So WebEx now and Meraki and other, all the cloud-based offerings, I would say, they all have some enhanced features that allows them to do things that we're not capable of doing today, which can be as simple as deleting the data, as well as just being able to decide on which platform you want to be in, whether your meetings that you are in, the video recordings of your meetings can also be deleted in time, and so forth. So there are some features that we had to make sure that the platform itself was ready from a GDPR perspective.
Now, we've had, I can add to that, we've had two major misunderstandings around GDPR, especially before it came in effect, was the concept of GDPR compliance for solutions, which does not exist. There is no certification. And also that there were some requirements to mandatory data to be stored in Europe, which GDPR is not that about, right? You can transfer data outside of Europe with proper mechanisms. So there were the two, let's say, misunderstandings that came up very often in customer discussions.
Now again, here GDPR, it tells you that you need to develop products that the products are very rich in terms of data that you use, personal data that they need to have privacy controls built in. They tell you that you have to have adequate level of security, which you kind of need to decide it yourself what kind of adequate level of security it is based on your enterprise. And then you need to have, again, a very solid breach notification process. We have one, and it's kind of a very long one, and we had to use it also in a few times. And it's one of those elements that you absolutely need to have, because you absolutely need to stop the bleeding and making sure that you tell your customer what happened, and maybe in certain cases you even need to tell your authorities. So that's a big requirement also. And you have a very limited time to do so. It's like 72 hours to let know your customers and your DPAs that they need to they need to know that the breach has happened. Now, I have also some news for you. So GDPR looks very difficult. Well, I'll tell you that we have a proof that GDPR is not a bad thing, actually. We do have proof of it. So this is a study that we conducted last year. We interviewed 3,000 security people worldwide in a double-blinded survey, meaning that we don't know who they are. We know, however, that in order for them to be part of this survey, they need to say that they were fluent or conversant on GDPR and privacy. So what we find out is that globally, so company globally, not only Europe, 59% of them, they say they're ready for GDPR. 29 of them, they say that they will be ready within a year. And then we have a small percentage that are actually, they don't know whether this will apply to them or whether they need more time. As you can see, obviously, the ones that are more ready on the right-hand side are like Spain or Italy, because normally the European countries are the ones that understand better the requirements. But what I find fascinating is that we got also India and Mexico and Argentina actually on the top, on the right-hand side, which to me means two things. One is that this is a global issue. So there are companies that you need, in order to enter even our market in Europe, that need to use this. And so India, obviously, to me, it wasn't that shocking. But also that this is something that people are using it. And it's a different margin from what we had last year. Last year, we didn't have this number. The number was much lower. So it means that in the year, people have invested money and people and processes to make sure to get ready for GDPR. Another thing that it's interesting is that the one that the privacy creates delays. So the ability to close a deal, it's most of the time it's held up by privacy requirements. And some of you that I see here, because people that I work with, they probably testimony that. But what they think it's amazing is that it's actually 3.9 weeks of delay on average, meaning that, and for us, at least at Cisco, can be a difference between hitting a quota or not. So for us, it was a number that we understand because we feel that, but it's actually confirming what we always have thought, within our enterprise. Another thing that it's interesting, I think, is that the one that they feel that they're very much ready for GDPR are the ones that are experiencing less delay in terms of deal closure. Another one that I think is quite interesting is that actually the ones that are ready are experiencing less breaches, and even if they're hit by a breach, they will have a less impact from a revenue perspective. So that to say that, if you think that doing the privacy right is not helping, it's not bringing you benefit, we do think that there are a number of benefits associated with that. And then we have another thing that is not here on this slide, because unfortunately the slide was released on the Friday of Cisco Live, so we couldn't update the slides. But another important number is that 97% of the participants to the survey, they said that privacy is a business enabler beyond compliance. And among the things that they say the privacy is helping them to announce in their business is that, first, GDPR helps you to understand what you have in your data house, let's say like this. If you understand what you got, then you can think other business model to use those data that you maybe didn't think before. And also, it's helping them understand the quality of the data. Remember, as we announce our innovation, the data will be the data that you analyze will define what you need to do next. And so if you don't have a good quality of data, then usually you're not able to do to make the right prediction in terms of business decisions. So all of them thought that this was really the two top of minds. And certainly privacy is helping them to get better from a security perspective. Because indeed, one thing that you need to do to get privacy right is also to get security rights.
Just one comment on the data breaches, Lorena. The EDPB, so the group of European DPAs, made some recommendation and communications on clarification on GDPR. And one of them was about data breaches. And they stated that if the data that is breached cannot be exploited, for instance, it's encrypted, there are less obligations for the processor or the controller to reach out to the data subjects, right? They have to reach out to the DPA, but not to the data subjects. So having a solution with privacy by design, with encryption at rest, for instance, will help, right? So just sharing that with you.
So if you want to know, there is a full report on this. It's much broader than the one I showed you to you, but it's on the trust.cisco.com, and you will find there the full report. For us, this is the second time that we do this. It really helped a lot of other companies to actually build their case to invest more in GDPR. So I really encourage you to, after this, when you're back home and you have time, to go through the report and learn whether you can have some insights for your company as well. In terms of things that we have done. Now, our journey to get ready for GDPR or to get very much privacy mature, it's not because of GDPR. We had an enormous amount of customers telling us that, Cisco, you need to do better, especially if you want to move to be a cloud-based company, you need to do better at this. This is not acceptable. So the reason why we launched this program and we we spun it across the entire enterprise and product development is because our customer wanted to do it. And so this actually started 4 years ago. So well before GDPR was even something that we need to implement it absolutely. We think that is a competitive differentiation. I mean, I think you all read the news. You've seen Tim Cook, you've seen the CEO of Microsoft saying at Davos that privacy is a good thing for business. We kind of knew this before, but for us it is a competitive differentiator. Most of the time, what makes the difference between customers saying no to a deal or not. We had customers with a solution that was only in the POC development, so reached that stage, they just didn't want to buy our solution because it was not privacy ready. All of them were rejecting it. So the ability to get privacy right will also determine whether you will do business or not. In terms of the risk landscape, of course there are risks associated with nobody wants to go in the news, nobody wants to get a fine, and nobody wants to feel like they are the bad actors. Nobody, I think, all of us wants to be the Google at this time, although they do make a lot of money, so might think twice, but that you don't want to be, especially if you're not strong as Google, you don't want to be in the news saying that you got privacy wrong and then you got a huge fine or someone is complaining about you, especially if you're not Google. This is important to you. In terms of things that we have done, so we have a large data protection program. We have invested heavily because we are a global company in international transfer mechanisms, and we also invested very much in making sure that our top 4 portfolio was ready from a security perspective with the main certification that Thomas will tackle in a bit. In terms of things that we have done, this is our program. This is our 8 pillars of our program, and they span across our systems, our product development, training the employees, and getting everything ready. The first step is always a strategy, and in Cisco, the strategy, in privacy, the strategy doesn't have a pretty name, it's called policy. But I'm pretty happy to share that we are a company that operates in 165 countries. We only have one strategy, one policy that tells all the employees exactly what are the expectations of privacy in our products and for our employees worldwide. Identification and classification, briefly, that's what I meant before. GDPR was a huge opportunity for us to go and look into our systems and databases and understand what actually we had. I think we're all data hoarders by definition. I mean, I pile everything at home. I have all the letters that I receive in the post. They're all piled up on the same bench for like years. And I think everybody's a bit like that. And we're not an exception as a company. And so we had to go through that and actually make that change. Imagine if you're a hoarder and they tell you to throw out stuff that you're very, very attached to it. It's kind of painful, but it's a pain that we need to go through it. So this is what we have done as an organization. And it really helped us to even have new ideas, how to launch AI better, how to actually use data of our customers to actually improve a service that probably in some instances is not as good as it's supposed to be. So this work really helped us and spark ideas to the people that were involved in this, I would say, global work, because it took an enormous amount of people also spread out in all the functions of Cisco. Incident response, we have a team that works 24 hours by 7, and they're spread around the entire globe. They're not people that are privacy professional, no. They're people that we pull out of PCERT, which are using the same methodology of PCERT. You guys are all familiar with PCERT, I believe. We use the same process to actually handle incident response. So the team that that you guys we all contact are people that actually are former PCERT. They're now also trained as privacy professional. Why is that? Because in order to do this, don't reinvent the wheel. Just use something that is similar to what you want to achieve in terms of processes and apply to privacy. So if you have anything that supports your product development, your product launch, and it's all about keeping your products resilient in case something happens and so forth, just make sure that you do apply this also to incident response. Oversight and enforcement is all about vendor management. We all have an enormous amount of vendors, and we need to make sure that they're also applying the same obligation that we apply to our customers also to us. As you have seen probably in the news, vendor management is the top concern for big enterprises, because most of the time from a security perspective and a privacy perspective, that's where most of the time the problem is held. I don't know if you're familiar. I remember the case in Scandinavia where just the Ministry of Transport, they outsourced another company. They just didn't look up their security measures. They just didn't look up their what was going on, and essentially they completely leaked all the data of their citizen. It was all on the dark web, ready to be used, about your what car do you drive, what is your passport numbers, all about you was out there in the network. And it was done by a public sector actor, so which, by default, they should be more secure than other ones. Privacy and security by design. In Cisco, we have something called the secure development lifecycle. I'll go through that in the next slide. But just to, again, don't change processes you already have, use them, and apply to privacy. We have a privacy development lifecycle that we then applied also to inject privacy controls in the development lifecycle. So that's what we've done as a company. Awareness and education, you cannot build all of this if nobody knows in your enterprise. So make sure that you get people that come to you and they know who you are in your enterprise, that you train them to come to you, to join forces and to protect the data, either if they are in a HR function, in a finance function, or actually if they're in your product development. You might want to make sure that when you're creating a solution that needs to use data, and particularly personal data, they do it right. In terms of international transfer, I'm not going to bother you about all of this. And the only thing that I wanted to share with you, and I think it's unique of Cisco, is that some days before GDPR, we got the EU Binding Corporate Rules, which is a global certification that says that we will protect personal data in accordance to the GDPR principle worldwide. To get this kind of certification, we had to go through a thorough compliance from the data protection authorities, and has been quite of a journey, which also means open up our all our books and stuff to the DPAs to make sure that they can see that we're actually doing the right thing. And we are among the few companies that actually achieve this also under GDPR. Third-party and review certification.
Yeah, so for the cloud services, so Cisco WebEx, we do have those free certifications. So ISO is a certification that certifies that you have a consistent documentation, policies, and procedures around your information security management system, right? When it's about maintaining it, improving it, monitoring it, reviewing it. So this is a certification that we got for Cisco for WebEx for many years. We also have a SOC 2. SOC 2 is the former SSAE 16 certification. So it's a third-party audit. So we have third-party auditors that come to our InfoSec team and data centers and will challenge us on all our security statements. And that's a certification that we use very often in a sales cycle with WebEx for cloud services, because customers, they want to have a third-party opinion, right? We do have security white paper, we have very nice presentation, but we want to hear from third party, and this is what the SOC 2 Type 2 report is about. So this can be disclosed under NDA to any partner or customer. And you have in there all the auditors' recommendation. They do score all our statements. They do check, for instance, that indeed the InfoSec staff, there is a background check before being hired. They do check that indeed when you have a WebEx meeting, you record it. The recording cannot be accessible by anyone until the host shares the link and the password, right? So all those statements are challenged, scored with some recommendations. So that's a document that we really push when in the sales cycle. There is a SOC 2 Type 3 public report that you can have on the Cisco website, so with much less details, but it's a public-facing version. And finally, we have the C5 certification, which is unique to Germany, but it's to make it short, it's a combination of ISO and SOC. So everything around your procedures, policies, and the SOC 2, so the auditing piece on top, that gives you basically the C5 certification that we have. And at the Cisco level, we do have ISO 27001 as well.
So do you guys use C5? Because C5 is a German-led certification, which was supported by ENISA as being like the top security certification that you can achieve today, because apparently has inside all the GDPRs and the NIST requirements. For us, this has been, again, something that the customer asked us to do, actually. And not only the Germans, surprisingly, but many customers within Europe. And it's actually proven to give a lot of comfort, especially in the enterprise, in the public sector piece, because C5 aligns also to the major ones in Italy and in France, type of certification that they want to push. So for us, it was again, it's a bit of a change, because it requires much more in-depth auditing that we used to do with ISO. So for us, it was a bit of a journey as well. I don't know if that you have any experience around that, but I suggest that you look into this. You look also on this. If you're looking into something that proves that from a security standpoint you're doing well, I suggest that you look at the C5 Cloud Catalog certification framework, because I think you will see this being replicated also in the certification that are coming up from a GDPR perspective, and also for a number of certifications coming up at local level to get the ability to actually serve a public sector entity. So for the ministry and the governments, this is something that they now require. If you want to sell them a cloud-based, this is only for cloud-based offerings. But this is something that I will encourage you to look into it. In terms of things that we have done, this is just some numbers in terms of readiness. We have 75,000 employees, and we got 80,000. It means that probably someone retake it a few times, the test, just to be sure. We have 350 privacy assessment made. That's only the enterprise, not the offerings. If you consider also the offerings, I think we reach about like 500 in terms of, which means that collectively we have to sit down with the enterprise and make sure with the system, with the entire enterprise function, but also the product development people sit down and make sure that they will consider privacy within their development life cycle. We had 130 people. That's more than, I think now we're about like 200 again because it's a bit outdated. But the CSPs are the vendors that actually work on the cloud-based offerings. So our vendors need also they need to be audited when we onboard them, and then we need to make sure that they apply the requirements that we give to them. And to them, to my knowledge, at least the one that got escalated to me in EMEA, we make no exception. So the reason for that is very simple, because they reflect the same requirements and obligations that we give to our customers. So if they are not the same, we're in big troubles. To the example that I meant earlier, if we don't audit the security of our partners or vendors, and then we say to our customers that we actually comply with certain things, that's a big trouble for us. In terms of, we also get people trained to be privacy professional. We don't believe that you need to have a particular background to learn about privacy. I think you need to learn. And as such, we actually train people. We give them an actual certification, which is the only one that I think is credible today. It's the one that's given by the IPP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals. There are a number of different trainings that you can take. You can take the one to become a privacy technologist. You can be a privacy manager, or just more broadly understand what privacy is all about and take the certification for it. As a company, we have invested in these individuals to make sure they are our champion within the organization, which also means sometimes that they also leave Cisco, because indeed it's a very high market at the moment, hiring a privacy professional.
Lorena, just maybe one comment on the binding corporate rules. So for those of you who are not familiar with the transfer mechanism, if you look at GDPR, you can transfer data outside of the EU using several mechanisms, right? You transfer to a country that has an adequate level of data protection. And for the US, you need the privacy shield, but the privacy shield is, let's say, under discussion between Europe and US. So you have other mechanisms, and BCRs is one of those mechanisms. So having a cloud service like Cisco, which offers more than the basic privacy shield, but also BCRs or model clauses, is also a guarantee. I mean, that's a very good answer for corporations, enterprise.
So here we come to the privacy engineering piece. What you see here, and then Thomas will explain even more of that, is our CSDL process. It was launched 10 years ago. And it took us 10 years to get it from a security point to roll out in our own enterprise. It was, the beginning is something that Microsoft launched because they were experiencing so much bugs in their softwares that they actually need to put a process in place to make sure that before something was launched into the market, we'll actually go through secure development life cycle. Now, we use in privacy exactly the same process, but we included also privacy requirements. Do you want to talk a bit what it is and how it applies, or otherwise?
I will make CSDL. I will make a parallel between CSDL and the ISO certification, right? You have a process and procedures in place. You know, it's a virtuous circle here. You do implement, you develop, you get reviewed, You have a plan to address vulnerabilities, and then you go through the cycle to make sure that the solution is privacy ready. So as Lorena said, we have added some product security baselines, so some mandatory criteria for privacy, or around 15 of them, you said, Lorena? 15? Yeah. So privacy is now part of the requirements, and this is a compulsory step for all products at Cisco, going through CSDL.
So just to give you an example on how this will work, right? So in the planning phase, that's when it's all work very much in automation. So the engineer that is working on a given solution, they need to contact us to get what kind of security requirements and privacy requirements they need to put in place. By the way, this is now becoming mandatory, meaning that we have the ability to stop the shipping if this is not done by the engineers. So they need to contact us and describe what kind of solution they're working on it, and based on that, we give them back on an automated way the main requirements that they need to focus on. It can be as simple as encryption, making sure, understand what threat modeling framework you need to apply. It also can be, from a privacy perspective, that you need to do an assessment based on these requirements. So if it's very cloud-based and you are planning to use a lot of personal data, we will ask you what's the business model. Is that B2B, not B2B? Do we need to include a notice in there? How long do you need to keep the data? What is the outcome? And based on that, we will give them also requirements on deletion, on separation of data, on access control, role-based access control, and so forth. So this is why, for example, in the WebEx products, you do have different role-based access built in, for example. All of this is given in an automation to them. And then they develop, and then they come back to us to validate. In the validation phase, we actually see whether this has been put in place. And if that is done and it's done correctly, then the product is ready for launch. And we also produce what we call the privacy data sheets, which is a document which is available on the trust.cisco.com for all of you to see. And it's a document that explains exactly what kind of security have we built in our products, what personal data do we need from customers, how long do we keep it, where they will be stored. And for the offerings where we have the ability to store it in Europe, we will give the ability to store it in Europe as well. And also you will have the full list of the vendors that will work on the solution as well.
And to come back, Lorena, to come back to what you said earlier, this privacy data sheet helps to speed up the sales cycle. So before we had those documents, and we were regularly asked about what data is captured for how long, where are your data centers, we had no official documents around that. So this document addresses all those points, and that helps us to close deals much faster.
It's a very long document, as I said. So we thought, as an enterprise, how can we make it more easy? And so we developed this, which is a document, but it's one page. So the document, for example, we have WebEx meetings. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. So what we have done is we have categorized all the personal data that we will be involved for serving you with the solution. And you can see where they are, what is going to Cisco, why is going to Cisco, so what is the reason. Data processing, in simple words, means what we're doing with them. Cisco, you can see which of them they come to Cisco for what reason. As you can see here, most of the time we use this data just to provide you service and improve it. We also tell you when they go to the subprocessor and why it's going to the subprocessor, and what is actually, the subprocessor is the vendor. What is the vendor doing with it? And you also can see for how long we keep them, and what is the reason for keeping them longer. And then down here, you can just see, where they are, based on what type of data they are, where they are within the enterprise. And this is something that it's, I think, one of the data flows that it's the simplest one. But there are others where you have the full list of the vendors that will actually serve you. This is something that's proof for us to make it very easy to have a conversation with a customer that's a bit worried about privacy, and they just get it, to just see it. And it's also something that for them it's easy to use if they get audited, for example, by third party. It really helped us, for example, recently with Umbrella in a certification that we're trying to achieve in Italy and France. Because they just look at this, and for many requirements, they knew already where the data centers were, what kind of data were going where. And so from a data flows perspective, they were okay with this. And also it's proved to really close very quickly any negotiation that we have. This is also available. We launched this on Monday. Monday was International Privacy Day, and we launched it for most all I think there are 30 of them on the website. So if you're buying Umbrella, if you're buying WebEx, if you're buying Meraki, there is a map that explains this for each of them. And then, so just a few words on what GDPR looks like. That's what we have done. I mean, for me, I will come back to this like hundreds of times, but because this saves us even from a data breach, it's important that you know what data do you have. It's important also if in case of attack, in case of leakage, that you know what you've lost. It's quite important. For us, this has been the game changer, even in being more resilient in stopping the bleeding, but also being more active in actually stopping what's happening and see what was lost and what not, and also come back on the backup. We had some default in the latest months, and this has really helped us. The second is assess and manage. As I said, it's a collective responsibility to understand what's wrong, and then trying to manage and make sure that you improve your systems and make it more privacy, I would say, ready. It's the same way as you have like if you have a product that's defaulty, you want to improve them. The same thing that you need to do with privacy. It might not be getting very ready at the beginning, but it's a journey. So make sure that you keep it high on the top of your mind and that you continue using it. And then secure. First rule of good privacy is good security. So the more that you can invest in security and making sure that the data are not, somewhere where you do, even basic security, even that you know exactly where they are. That you don't have to go to encryption. It's not really a requirement. Makes life easier, to be honest. I feel safe that most of our products are encrypted, but it's not a major requirement. I think another requirement that's quite important is that you have a role-based access, because that also helps to manage the data within the enterprise of our customer. And then third, just make sure that you keep progressing, as I said, and then you keep all the people within your organization be known that you're actually doing this. Now I'm going to go a bit of facts and myths, because I think there are a lot of facts and a lot of myths around privacy. So with the help of Samimi, that I find it's quite nice. To the first point, say GDPR, it's compliant. There is no compliance to GDPR. You can be ready to GDPR, but since GDPR is an evolving, I will say, legislation, it's important that you keep up with the legislation, but it's also important that you understand that there is no product out there that will make you compliant. We don't sell products where we say that they are compliant. We are products that they are very much ready to get you to GDPR, but in terms of compliance, it's something that at the moment it doesn't exist. And we've seen it with the Google, even if you look at the Google case that we had, introduced so much of nuances that it's just, some companies are not, because of the ruling, some companies are not compliant anymore today. And then the second one, GDPR, I'm not even in the EU. This is another one, it's two-folded. It applies to everybody that it's located in the EU. So if you're coming from other countries which are not part of the EU, but you're here today, it's our obligation to protect you around with in accordance to GDPR. Another important piece is you don't have to store everything in Europe to make sure that you are compliant from a GDPR perspective. That's not the case. If you have done your homework, you have means to transfer data from a legal perspective, data can leave the EU and go somewhere else where it's also safe. So also this is quite important. I get these questions, I think, every day, and it's not.
To add to that, there is also an obligation for companies based outside of Europe who are processing EU citizens' personal data to have a representative.
People located in the EU,
to have a representative in EU.
And then I think we all got this GDPR everywhere. I think when we came close to the 28th of May, most of them, if we talk about compliance, most of them were not just compliant. So the people that you didn't hear from them for a very long time, it's like an old friend that wants a favor from you, and you don't even remember his name, and all of a sudden he's asking you, for all these favors, or give you probably a right to work and all of this. This is, what GDPR, this is exactly what the emails applied. They were companies that they couldn't care less about you. They just realized that they have your data, and they just contacted you to ask another consent to make sure that they could use your data. That's not good customer service, and it's not certainly GDPR compliant. If you have not been using data for a very long time, just delete them. Don't contact anyone. I don't always rely on consent. Yeah, I get this every day. We are a B2B company. We don't have any end users. Most of the reason why we use the data is because the customer gives us the data based on a contract that we have with them, and then we can use those data. So again, if everybody's asking about consent, it's just most of the time because they just want them to save themselves, but they're slowing the process. I had a company that wanted to ask consent to their own employees for using their data. I mean, how do you get paid? You get paid because you have a contract with that company, not because based on consent. That's just stupid. It's not even reasonable. And by the way, if you say that you got consent by an employee, every court will just take you down, because we all know if we work for a company, we need to do certain tasks, we need to give certain data about the reason why we were sick on a day, or the reason why we were in a certain location at a given time. I mean, Cisco knows that I'm here, I'm not in Brussels, which is my normal location. So make sure that you also understand that consent, and the consent that probably all these companies are asking from you, are not necessary. I'm compliant because I forgot about you. Another thing, so GDPR doesn't require you to delete everything, right? It just tells you that if someone comes and wants the data to be deleted, you need to see whether you really need still to have that data for other very important reasons, like task reasons, or because you're finishing your job and you need that data to, to continue service that customer. There are good reasons for keeping the data. It's just up to you to make that balance. It's not necessary to delete everything. I mean, I heard companies completely deleting the entire databases and during the night, because I thought that this was an absolute requirement. It's not an absolute requirement. There are good reasons for keeping the data. The good reason for which your employee will keep your data even if you leave your current job. There are good reasons for Cisco to keep the data from about your email and your billing, because we need it for tax reason for the next 3 years. Certain things we need to have it. Certainly, we have no reason to keep your instance messages, and that's why, for example, WebEx deleted within 7 days. So there are other reasons for which we don't need to keep your data, and we need to delete them. And then new privacy policies everywhere. Now, this is probably the only thing that it's important to have a policy. That's where you will dictate how you process data, but you're not solving with the policy itself. You actually need to do the work. It's like you're doing a contract, but then you are not living up to that requirement. It's like with that you marry someone and then you just don't care about that person anymore just because you have a contract. That doesn't make a marriage. It's like you have a child, but you don't take care of him. It's not because you have a child that by default you're doing the right thing. You need to kind of work on it. So same thing on privacy, work on it. The privacy policy, it's a nice start, but work on it, making sure that you're doing all the other things that we said today. And I think it's even more important for you guys that you don't know anything about privacy. You came here today, just I wanted to give you an heads up. I think today, privacy and the use of data, manage of data are fundamental in any service and any product that you are developing today. So in a certain sense, you are actually in the privacy game. So welcome to the game. And now I'll open up for some GDPR confused questions, if you like, because I know it's a confused topic. Any questions? And so we have been said that in Europe we don't ask many questions, so please ask me questions so I can prove wrong my leadership. Go.
My question would be that when would the Cisco validated design start to include recommendations for GDPR implementations?
In the product, so we started heavily 2 years ago. The reason for that is because it was a good timing for the shift of Cisco being more cloud-focused, and therefore also CSDL got also a step up. It became more automated. And so we started 2 years ago to put the requirements in the development life cycle. Now, this CSDL will be mandatory as of, I think, this month or next month. So, which means that if the developers are not taking into account the security requirements and privacy requirements, we will stop them to ship, essentially, or launch.
I understand, but so when you have Cisco products and services, right, you consult your sales team, you consult the data sheet on the website,
Mm-hmm.
It's like call manager, right?
Yeah.
So Cisco releases what they call Cisco validated designs, right?
Yeah.
Should you design whether if it's a small office, whether it's a multi-country, but this is the technology layer, how you interconnect, how you make routing work, how you make calls work,
Yeah.
etc. But in my understanding today, in those validated design, nothing talks about, what are your guidelines in terms of GDPR. Should you keep call recording inside Germany? Can you put it on a European cluster? So
It's true, it's an overlayer.
The requirements are determining your design, whether I should design it for one country,
Exactly.
one region, etc.
It is. So it's as you said, it's an overlayer. I think the security development lifecycle, it's an overlayer over your product design development. So which means that they work in parallel. So when you are in the planning phase, that's where you need to contact us and start that process also in parallel. Because what we want to do, but it's not perfect. You're right in that sense. It's possible that for the existing product at least, that when you release the product, the privacy and the security were not there yet, but it came in the second phase of release in the roadmap. So that's possible. However, what the engineers are trying to do today is that they release the same package of information at the same time. That's the ultimate goal that we want to do, is that as much as you have roadmaps also what are the other features adding, that you also will get the design, the privacy outcomes, the privacy and security outcome on the development as well.
Yeah, I'm not certainly concerned about whether a core manager can do role-based access. You guys will develop it in whatever release. I'm more concerned about how you design using Cisco products and technologies like an SD-WAN solution, and if it's specific to EU and non-EU countries, like you have an EMEA region, you have Middle Eastern countries, you have European. Am I asking the wrong question, guys? Here, or you understand? So basically, I need to consume Cisco products and services.
Yeah.
But how many servers, how many SDN controllers, how many log servers do I buy is also determined by GDPR. And the question is, Cisco validated designs currently, to my understanding, they don't contain these recommendations that you should design islands or you can design a European core manager.
So we don't believe, yeah. So for example, Umbrella and Meraki, they do this today. So technically, if you want to buy a Meraki and Umbrella today, they do have that even product design inside. And actually, the reason why they do it, certainly for GDPR, but has been proven that they have a local, reachable data center. It's actually, it gets the solution to run faster. So we can say it's because of GDPR, but we can say it's because actually it's an enhancing of the product itself. So for example, Meraki and Umbrella, they do this. For the other ones, we don't. And the reason for, well, WebEx, for example, when you take a call from WebEx, it will store in the UK. And then we do a backup in Amsterdam for the European customers. Yeah. But it's not something that we sell as a differentiator, as a European cloud, let's say. The reason why we don't do that, well, it's twofold. One is we believe that it may work in certain solutions where there is a customer desires, but in the other ones, it's actually a good thing to be able to replicate the data elsewhere around the globe. It makes it more secure. Why is that? Because it will be part already of the fiber, of the DNA, of the security requirements that we already put in place for our systems to work. So our data centers already have that layer of security, so if we need to build a new one and direct all the traffic there, then we need to make sure that the requirements are matched. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And secondly, because it's not really required. So in order for us to scale and to be a global company, we cannot just build unseamless clouds, which will happen if you do more European. They will not be connected as they are today. And this is not required for us, and that's why we don't do it for all the cases. And GDPR doesn't ask for it, by the way. GDPR says, if you don't have other reason if you don't have other means to transfer the data, you should keep it in Europe. But if you do, and in Cisco we do, we feel that we could transfer potentially the data everywhere.
Yeah.
Is that answered? Yeah.
The question was more related to in the cases when you just said about the cloud platforms, we are processing the data.
Yeah.
I think this question was more related to I'm operating some of the on-premise products myself, but I have the same problem because at that point I'm operating those products. Could I get some recommendations from Cisco to how do I deploy Cisco products to make my responsibility as a data processor easier?
Okay, so on the prem, that's a big fight that we had, especially while working with the cloud. For the on-prem one, we are pushing the view to come out with the same requirements that we give for the cloud base to you when you go on-prem. So something that is coming up, but it's taking a bit of time, is that we will give you a recommendation on how this solution will work when it's in your enterprise. And it's not leaving you, it's on-prem. Meaning that you will know for a long time the data, if we build in encryption, if we've done the pen testing, what kind of threat modeling do we use, and also from a privacy perspective, if the solution is able to delete the data in a given time, if there is a role-based access, as you said, all of that will need to be based. And this is something that we are working today to make it happen, because as we had other customers that actually are asking the same. However, I don't want to say that it's deprioritized, because it's just because with a multi-cloud environment, we have so much data to review and make sure that everything is fine that sometimes the on-prem, they take a bit of a second.
So that kind of privacy data sheet for.
Yeah,
for
we'll do.
such.
These are coming out, especially I think the one coming up are the one for WebEx and some of the security products. Probably Umbrella is in the run-up, but not all of them.
So we go into a session like this, and the guys are talking about the Catalyst 9K portfolio, and they say you should use SD access, and it helps you, and you should get telemetry, and you should enable encrypted traffic analysis, right? So immediately an engineer starts to think, and oh, by the way, I need to consult my data privacy officer. So we go back to our own companies, whether that's a service provider or a large enterprise, and I'm asking the question to my data privacy officer that, hey, I would use this data for analytics and assurance, but I need to capture encrypted traffic on the LAN. So the data privacy officer would look at me, and the first question he asks, or she asks, is, what's the vendor's recommendation? So then I contact my Cisco sales team, and they're like, oh God, we don't know.
Well,
so
it's funny. It's funny that the privacy. No, but I see. That's why we created this documentation. Is because we got these questions every day. It's like, what is your? What can you show me that I'm comfortable in using this solution? So that's why there is all this documentation that is coming up. In terms of recommendation, we usually don't recommend you anything. We just tell you how the solution will work from a privacy perspective. So for encrypting analytics, my answer will be as long as for the document, it's available for the encrypted analytics, it's written that we will only use the data encrypted as such. So we'll not be able to look at them, to make them in clear.
But you do.
But you do.
You break the encryption essentially. So you could actually.
But that, no, you're not breaking it, but because it comes from you at the collection point.
You go to a programmability session and they say install Snort as an IPS, IDS on a router, or install Wireshark on a router or a switch. I'm essentially doing deep packet inspection then.
Depends on the company's policy though. I mean, if you have set the policy that allows that, and have informed the subjects, let's say, then I think that should be okay. It depends.
No,
It's a bit tricky that point.
from a security perspective. From a security perspective, if you're using just a product from security reason, even GDPR, it says you can, even without informing the other ones. If you look in the recital, I think it's Article 15, I don't remember, but I'm happy to follow up. It says that if it's a security product that you're using in an enterprise, not to monitor people, but just really to keep your enterprise secure, then you can do it. You don't have to go through consent. It's a different layer of, but you're right. You also need to look at your policy that you have inside your enterprise.
Because you're still monitoring people.
Yeah.
You want it or not, you're still monitoring people. So
Yeah, but the one thing is that I'm targeting, monitoring means that I'm targeting you and see your performance to make sure you're in the office or not in the, I mean, there, potentially with all the data, you can do many things, and then it's up to you based on your policy and what you're trying, how you built it, what you're going to use it for, right? So for example, if you're using, I would say, for example, DPL, right, for your emails. Now, if you're using it targeted to, because you want to know what that particular employee is doing, and obviously that's monitoring, and that's not even allowed on private, it's employment law. So it's, from an employment perspective, you cannot do that. However, if you're using it only to make sure, and that's where the role-based access is really important, because there are different layers of access. The one that looks only if there is a malware in it, and the one that looks at the partner. So the moment that you see that there's malware always coming from the same endpoint, that's where it's allowed to look at and see what actually this individual is doing. But the reason why you're doing this is not because you want to control, but because you want to make sure that the enterprise is secure.
Same thing with a compliance officer role in WebEx. You have a compliance officer role who can look at any message, any files from anyone for legal investigation.
Does it also apply that rule to troubleshooting?
Troubleshooting, yes.
We are network people. We can see the switches, they can see the data.
Yeah.
So how do we?
No, well, certainly.
Feel safe and ready?
For example, the one thing that I can tell you from attack perspective from Cisco, the changes that we have made. Well, certainly we have asked our customers collectively to actually make sure that when you have open a service request for Cisco, that you put the bare minimum that it's necessary. You will not believe how many information were put in the white notes in the second piece of the, sorry, I'm not very technical, I know, but just to let you know, in the notes space of the service request, there were information that we couldn't care less about, like the PayPal name, the contact information, who this machine belonged to. We couldn't care less about this. We just really needed to know only the IP addresses of the machine and work on it. And so this is something that we have asked it to scrap out. If they have information that are not necessary, they need to take it out immediately when they open the service request. And that's just already limited the number of information you have. And then secondly, I think it's just good management. I think from the customer perspective, we can do the work of taking out the things that we don't need, but the reality is that our customer is sending us enormous information that we don't need. As I said, I show you in the map, WebEx, most of that what we do is it's just keeping the service going on. We don't look in your videos. We can if we need to do troubleshooting, but we don't look, but we don't. So we have role-based access, so not only all people can see, in the different layers of tax service. The first layer will not see all the data. They will see whether they can solve the solution without getting in. So we have role-based access for it. For things that we do special is that we train our employees to make sure that they don't use that information otherwise. We make sure that our customer tells their customers that this is going on and what is the reason for it. To be honest, for me, the moment that you're clear on what you're doing, the customer is clear with their customers, you're not using the data for other reason, you're fine. It's not, so the impression that the message I'm trying to say is that privacy is about actually using the data, not using it. So just that you need to use it in a way that it's secure. And that's the message that I want to...
And we also come with some default configuration. Exactly. So we collect very few, by default when we create a WebEx site, for instance, to join a WebEx first name, last name, email, that's it. If customer wants to add additional fields, that's their choice, but we only need first name, last name, email. And still you can put any name you want, right? We just use that for reporting purposes.
Yeah, I know the troubleshooting. Yeah.
It's coming from the company.
The only thing that we really knew is...
it's just part of what we have.
So what we really knew most of the time is an IP address, and most of the time related to the machine that it's working. Sometimes we need the logs, that's true. But that's our job, to keep it secure, to make sure that we're using only for that reason. We even tell you, and I'm pretty sure that we do, we even tell you that if we want to run analytics on that you are okay with your customers. So if you need to run analytics about the logs, that you are okay with the customer that we do that. However, we don't do it to profile, we do it to make analytics, to give you back then an aggregate information about how the service is working. So for WebEx, you will have back an aggregate information of analytics. I think that happens to you every day today. You don't get like my WebEx, the WebEx that Lorena Marciano is using, it's doing this. You don't get this today. You get information from an admin level, I think, globally.
And there are also some best practices at customer. I mean, for instance, we have a plane manufacturer in France. You know what I mean? When they join a WebEx, they don't put first name, last name. They are employee codes instead. And the meeting numbers are also coded. So we collect information, we have no clue what they mean, right? So I mean, if we just use those data, as you said, for troubleshooting purposes. And something maybe
But I know this, because when I joined Cisco 4 years ago, that was our top priority. Yeah. So because we saw by looking into it that we were collecting data that were not completely necessary, we're becoming orders of data that were not sensible, not very much. But nonetheless, we're keeping a lot of data that we really, really needed even in the first place. So we've done a lot of, I would say, a lot of that has been coming from the engineers. That we train them, and we give them actually a way to categorize the data and recognize. So for example, if they have a log, they will know if it's confidential, they will know if it's a personal data, and if such, they will have a rule to take it out or not, based on what they need to do. But there is a way that we make sure that we, at the entry point, that we keep as less as possible, and then also that we use it only for that purpose. And if there is anybody else, then we need to get another.
So it's documented, and let's say it's in the contract that we sign.
It's in the contract. No, but not only in the contract. Yeah, for you, yes, it will be in the contract that you sign. But for us, it will. But for us, no. Well, we also actually, for a customer that asks, we also show them how we do it. So you can even ask that, and that's also why don't have only the contract, but also this documentation. There's one on TAC as well that shows you exactly what we do. That's our assurance to you. It's an additional documentation that it's actually proof of compliance. So that's why we created these documentations, because we've seen many customers saying, oh, I trust you, Cisco, it's nice, but how can I actually, me, be trustable if I don't have enough information about what you're doing? And so this is why there is this documentation available on the website. So it's not only the contract, it's actually an additional documentation that if you want, you can make it even part of the contract if you like.
Maybe you should all request the SOC 2 Type 2 report. So third-party audit, and everything that we claimed here is actually challenge documented. So go for it.
I mean, more than give you a document that says, this is what we're doing, how we're doing it, even in more details. I mean, you should come to us and stay with us, I think, a day. That's the only other option, to be honest. We'll show you on our WebEx. That's the only other option. And on the other hand, I think that being trustable, I think it also drives out how many issues we had in the past, or how much we can be trusted is also if everything is working well, you don't get complaints, and if you get, we help you and collaborate with you. I think that's also proof of being trustworthy. I know that there is a lot of confusion with GDPR, but I think it's also part of bad handling that we see on the news, I think. That's also part of the discussion, I think.
Another question with regards to Brexit. So our data privacy office team, they mentioned that if Britain decides and they leave, and whatever it will turn out, they will still remain GDPR compliant because they agreed to follow the same rules, right?
Yeah, see, that's exactly the case.
2 years, 3 years down the road, 2021, 2022, Great Britain, the Parliament decides they want to do something completely different. They want to store data different, handle data different, whatever. So how would Cisco in that case notify us as customers that you guys are moving or changing data?
It's one of the requirements. We will notify our customer if we need to move the data from one site to another. So if we are not able to use WebEx in the UK anymore, you will be notified that there is another. And also this. Yeah, and it also will be available on the web. The changes to the private, those documentation is to be always up to date because we are published on the website. So besides making communication, you will end up also having documentation available for you on the website. Now, what I hope for Brexit is that we will find a solution for it from a privacy. No, just because they're doing a very good job also from a privacy perspective. It's one of those countries that really invested in privacy. And so I think that they are quite strict in what they're demanding. So my hope is that actually that will be sorted out and this will not be necessary. And I think it's everybody hope for many other reasons, economical even, no? I think, besides privacy, there are even more urgent problems. It's in March, everybody gets paid or not. It's like there are many compelling issues around Brexit and about flow of data. It's not only about privacy, it's about employment, it's about economics and so forth. So the ability to sell, the ability to pay people, all of that will be also a challenge. So, right. Unfortunately, I think I need to leave you, but I'm happy to follow up. You can find me also on the website, so feel free to contact me. We also have an alias for all your questions, which is very simple to remember. It's privacy@cisco.com. So feel free to message with your questions. Feel free also to talk to your salespeople, because my job is also to make sure that salespeople know all about this. And so if they tell you they don't know anything, just pass them their name and I'm happy to talk to them. And tell them that they need to go and retake the training. But that's another story. So thank you so much. I hope that was useful to you, and I hope that when you go back, you have some ideas to take action in your enterprise. Right? Thank you.